I think at the end of the day, when all this social media stuff really dies down, I do think the meaningful relationships are going to be the things that stick. I really, really do. I think the superficiality has to, and pimping product and all this stuff has to sort of mellow out. We're in a real upwards trajectory on that, but I think people are going to want the real stuff. And I don't know, as a brand, I know for me, I try to respond to every DM, every message. I think it's really important for me as the business owner. And even if someone's being nasty, sometimes Noelle won't know how to respond to somebody, and I'll say, I'll take them. And you know, it's just, people want to be heard, and they want to be able to vent, and they want to be looked at as a human being, and it's having those human contact points. I think it's super important. And I think for longevity of the brand, I hope that that's what keeps us going. And I can't say I want it to be twice as big. It doesn't matter to me. It could stay right where it is as we have the quality of people.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. I'm Jess, I'm your host, and this is the place where we share stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose. BJ and I are so excited to be coming to you tonight live from Canyon Bike's North American headquarters here in Carlsbad, California. We have an amazing live audience. Can we get a little amazingness? Sweet! Love it. And we all just finished indulging in some delicious snacks from our dear friends at Jules Food in the back row. Keeping it cool with their vegan brie cheese. Amazing. Kristin, what do you think?
It was really good.
It was really good.
Really good.
She's not a convert yet. And Choice Juicery sending over amazing food for us, you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Canyon, for welcoming us back. And thank you to the beautiful Kristin Mayer for being with us tonight. Kristin is founder of Betty Designs, a company that she started during one of the most difficult times in her life. And if you guys know us, then you know we're going to be diving into that story. And since starting the company in 2010, Kristin has grown Betty Designs into one of the most recognizable brands in the world of endurance sports. She is making badass girls feel beautiful in her intelligent, playful, and bold designs. And Betty is not just an apparel company, it's a community, it's a tribe, it's a family, and I can only assume that it is a piece of her life where she finds purpose. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. This is a long time coming.
It's a long time coming. And I love that you shared the backstory a little bit on your Instagram.
That? I had to.
It was right out there, yeah.
We asked Kristin to be on the show a couple years ago, and she said no.
And we've been turned down a few times.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
No,
once.
I don't think we've ever. No, I think we've turned down one other time.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, one other time. This is going to be like episode 160, just so you know.
But you have to tell them why when I confess to you.
You tell us why.
Okay, so in my defense, I wasn't just being rude.
No, she wasn't.
I was actually mortified because these two live such a purposeful life. I felt sort of like, okay, I'm not vegan, I don't meditate, I really need to better myself before I can sit in the company of these two. So I politely declined because I said I didn't think I was a fit.
Yeah, she was a perfect fit because, you know, we want to share stories of people who have risen from the ashes. And as far as I knew at the time, you had risen from the ashes.
I don't know if they were ashes.
No?
No, I don't know.
But you were engulfed in flames.
I don't know what they were.
You were the phoenix. You were engulfed in flames.
Rising up.
So anyway, here we are 2 years later. She has spent 2 years bettering herself to be on the show. And we're really, really proud of all the work that she's done.
Oh boy, the pressure.
So we're going to jump right in. You know, we're here at Canyon, and Canyon is the title sponsor for the Belgian Waffle Ride, which is an epic race here in San Diego. And you just completed your 4th consecutive year doing the Belgian Waffle Ride, right?
I did. Well, it was my 4th waffle. I did a wafer in 2015, actually. So it was technically my 5th finish line. And it's the most epic, fun cycling event, I think, in the entire planet. I mean, it's just... It scares the you-know-what out of me. It's totally out of my comfort zone. It ticks all the boxes in terms of going out there and seeing, can I hit the finish line? Can I cross that line? Because it's 130 to 140 miles, depending on the year. You've got about 100 miles of asphalt, and then you've got these 16 to 18 pieces of dirt segments, and they're all different types of terrain, and you do it on your road bike. And it's really rad.
And then you end...
And you end
double peak.
You end up double peak, but for me, it's more terrifying to go down the backside actually than to go up. So yeah.
So what? Like you were a triathlete. You raced a lot. You've raced
too much.
Yeah, many times. But triathlon.
Yep.
And then did you move into cycling? And when did the BWR come into your life? Like, when did you even know? Because that's such a unique event. And we had Michael on the show, Michael Marks, who's the director and the creator of that. And so if you know Michael like we do, then you know it's going to be totally epic.
Yeah, totally
epic. So it's
epic.
not like, had you been road racing?
Oh gosh, no. All the years I raced triathlon, I couldn't even ride a bicycle. Especially if you ask my husband right now, because when he met me just as I was phasing out of being a tri-geek. So, it was actually, what happened was I stopped triathlon. I was tired. I was exhausted. And I decided I love to stay fit. I can't sit still. My parents are here. They'll tell you. I could not sit still as a child.
True.
So
Her mom's shaking her head. Yeah. No,
so I needed another thing. I like endurance events. And I found that when I started doing them in my mid-20s, like that was sort of my thing. I love the mental challenge just as much as the physical. And so I needed a new thing to do, but I didn't want to race. I was tired of trying to see how hard I could go. It was more like, could I just do it? And this thing scared the crap out of me. It was really out of my comfort and skill zone. And I just thought, I got to do this. It's epic. And honestly, at the time, there were, I think, maybe 20 to 25 women who even towed the starting line. And that was intriguing to me because I always want to do things that no one else wants to do. I have this little kind of sassy side of me. Like, don't tell me no, because then you're in trouble. That kind of a thing. It was one of those. It was like, I shouldn't do it, but I'm going to try.
So were you mountain biking at the time?
No. Heck no.
But so how did you train for it? Were you getting on the dirt, or were you just like, I'm going to deal with it on race day?
No, we got on the dirt, and there's actually a young man in the audience as well who's been with me through a lot of the early days on the dirt, being very patient. We got on the dirt, and it was, I call myself Granny Mayer. I mean, it is hands on the brakes and the wrong brake, and the rear wheel's skidding out, and tears are in my eyes, and my foot comes out of the pedal, and I'm one-legging it on a tiny incline. It's a 1% grade. So that's how it started. But the interesting thing about me is, when I do put a race bib number on, even though I'm not trying to like place in a race, there's something that happens to me, and I get that fire, and I get that it's like the commitment goes into overload, and I just have to get to the finish line.
We had Scotty and Carrie on here at Canyon, and Scotty is a trainer and Carrie's a racer.
I was always a racer.
Like you're a racer.
Even though I'm not racing anymore, technically, that was my thing. I'd much rather put the bib number on and go hit it. Yeah. Something happens to me, I get so excited and scared, but I love that.
So excitement and fear come from the same part of
For me.
the brain. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the body can't tell the difference. It's just how you relate to
So
it.
they really can't tell the difference. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it has the same physiological reaction in the body as fear and excitement. So if you practice fear, if you live a fearful life, if you're a warrior, and you're feeling that, you can change the lingo and decide that you're just going to be excited, because your body's not going to change in the way that it feels, but the words that you use around it will change, and then your perspective about it will shift significantly. So what does training look like? Now you're with the big guns. You are a big gun there in all white. You always wear white, which I
always
love.
wear white because it's funny.
Yeah,
It's
you
just
should.
dumb.
Because it's like the dirtiest race.
Who wears white for a dirt event? I mean, honestly, to be out there all day and it's 90 degrees sometimes out in Ramona, and you're disgusting when you finish. Wear white. Why not?
What does training look like for that? Like, what did your training for this year look like? Because you keep, like, ticking off the time. Like, you're taking chunks out of your time year after year.
So, well, like I said, I started in a pretty grim space in terms of my abilities, and it's like anything. I hired my old tri coach every year because for me, I like the structure of knowing what I should do. I also can't handle as much training as a lot of my peers. So for me, being told what to do and when to rest works well for me. I don't have to think about it, but I love to go out and do it. And I trust him. He worked with me for almost 18 years on the tri side. He knows me really well. And so when I started doing this, I didn't know anything about endurance riding. I'd never ridden a bike. I mean, I think back in triathlon days, I maybe rode 70 miles a week on a big week. So how would I do this? And he just broke it down. And that's what we did. And every year we've done a little more volume. Like, how much more volume can I do? Because for me, I'm never going to be fast out there. That's never my intent or my goal, is to see like who I can beat. It's more about me. Can I be better every year on the day? Can I be a little less fearful? Can I, when I reach that dark place at mile 90 that I always hit it coming out of Bandy Canyon, can I overcome that? And that's a really big piece of it for me. And that's, to me, achieving something. So every year I go back because I just want to do better. And when I kind of stopped triathlon for a couple of reasons, but one of it was I felt like I had sort of done everything I could in some ways. So this is like a new challenge.
Yeah, I mean, there's no race like this.
Yeah.
So I love how, I was saying like you're taking chunks off your time, but you kind of shifted to the more important metrics, which is like, can I be a little less fearful?
Yeah.
Can I be a little less dramatic coming out of Bandy Canyon? And so are you finding that you're fine-tuning the mental game there, or?
This year was probably the biggest shift mentally in terms of less fear. I mean, Black Canyon was horrible. It was really deep, loose sand, and I was horrifically slow in that segment, and it was scary, but not scary at the level it was the first year I did the race. Different kind of scary. And then that Bandy Canyon section has always been my nemesis, and I said to my husband, this year when we come off the dirt there and we go up the 2K climb on the road, I'm not melting down and I'm not having a mental breakdown. I'm not going to say, because I always get there and I feel dead and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to finish? And I said, this year I'm not doing that. I'm going to overcome that place. I didn't even know, I was so excited this year. It was so interesting. So I don't know why that is. Well, it might have just been the mindset.
You vocalized that. Your mindset. You vocalized, you set the intention, you said there's no way, and it just seems...
Yeah, and there were hard parts during the day, but that was my one place I hit every year, and this year, nope.
But I think you nailed it. I mean, you set the intention. So I think there's like this misconception with the mental game that it's going to be like in the moment I'm going to be better coming out of Bandy Canyon. Yeah. But you had already done the work to set yourself up for success because you decided that you weren't going to be that way this year.
Yeah.
So then what happens is like that starts to get programmed because you're practicing it, you're talking to Matt about it. And you're reprogramming. It's so easy. Like we reprogram our subconscious. Now you've overridden those old patterns, and you came springing out of Bandy Canyon, feeling good and excited. And so now you've got momentum there, and you can continue doing that every year.
Now you need to find something else.
I need to find something else, or I have to have my husband allow me to do this again next year, which is another topic for another day. He says he's done.
Do you guys train together?
We do. We do a lot of training together.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very patient. He waits a lot. Yeah.
So does mine. So what advice would you have for somebody who's looking to do BWR or something that's really off the charts like this, like a bike race that's like dirt and road, and that you have to really be like an everything cyclist to do?
So I think the number one thing is, do you really want to do it? Because I believe if you really, really want to do it, then you can do it. And I think that from even now to this day, I mean, if you go mountain bike with me, I'm really not great. So people will say, I can't believe you do that. And something just happens. And I think it's also just breaking it down into little pieces. And, even in the training, there was, we were doing this one segment called Lemon Twist that's a really technical single track. And I did it a bunch of times this year. And I think it was 10 days out from the event. We went out and we put our race tires on, and I absolutely had a meltdown that day out there. I took my foot out twice. I hadn't done it all year, and I was like, what is going on with me? But it's those little things of just kind of keeping at it. And so I think you have to want it. And I think that in knowing that I can do it, I think it's like an Ironman. I think honestly, if you want to do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
I really do.
I think you definitely have to want. We were actually just watching the Steve Jobs movie last night, and I love this line for it when he's they're assembling the Mac team, and he says to them, like, you have to have passion for what you're doing, like you have to want it, because if you don't, then you're not gonna have what it takes to persevere. Like you're not gonna persevere to the end. Yep. So you've got to want it. Yep. And then you'll do what it takes.
You'll do what it takes.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about doing what it takes. Because the BWR is not the biggest challenge you've had in your life. And so to the gratitude of many, many badass women out there, Betty Designs was really born from one of the toughest times in your life. And so can you just Take us through that story right from the nitty gritty beginning.
You want the nitty gritty, huh?
Oh, we want it all,
boy.
girlfriend.
Well, all I'm going to say is, so there's a very finite moment where that switch was flipped. And it was literally, and I might cry.
Matt, you said she was going to cry. He said, guaranteed.
He loves
cry.
it. So, cry. You know, basically, I was married for almost 14 years. I had a 6-year-old. And you think, okay, marriage is tough. You know, you're grumpy with each other and this and that. But I always thought, and especially watching my parents, you know, you have arguments and things, you stay together. And so I thought I was going to be with this person who was the father of my son my entire life. And things had been you know, weren't awesome, but I didn't think much about it. And finally one day I just said to him, I said, what's going on? You seem extra grumpy. And you just seem like you don't want to be here. And I remember it was 1 p.m. on a Monday. I think it must have been some sort of holiday. He was home from work. I worked from home. And I was in my bathrobe at 1 p.m, which is common. But because I work at home, I said, you just don't seem interested. And he just deadpanned me in the eye and he said, I'm not. I don't love you and this isn't the life I want anymore. And it was like, excuse me? It was rough because I was in shock. And I said, are you serious? Yep. And it was plain as day. It was just like, hey, I'd like a burger, you know? And it was what it was. But that was it. It floored me. I was done. Yeah.
So when we had met last week, and we had shared some time having some coffee and getting to know each other a little bit better, and so you had told this story to us, and then you told us, like, for the next, was it 3 weeks or 3 months, like, that you were still sharing the same space, but you realized, like, I gotta move on, right? Like, you've got to start living.
Yeah.
That must have been hell.
It was really hard. He was relieved, and I wasn't angry at him, I just didn't understand. It was really not understanding, and I was very hurt, as you can imagine. And he was there for a while longer, and I finally just said, you gotta move out, because I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do. I was literally in a ball. So it was one little thing at a time. He moved out, and it was day by day, sometimes it was hour by hour, sometimes it was minute by minute. Because all I could think of, the thing that came in my head, what was I going to do? I mean, yes, I was raised to be an independent female, but I never thought I'd be faced with that. And I wasn't helpless, but I felt helpless. So how do I even get out of bed the next day? How do I get up without having this person there that's been there for that long? I didn't know what that looked like. But how do I, in all this hurt, stay strong for my son? Because that was really the most important thing, because I have to do this for him. Not only for me, but for him. Because we're going to go on. That was the big one.
So you were a graphic designer at the time.
Yep.
And you had been doing some custom stuff. But now you had a mortgage to pay.
Yep.
I mean, everything was now 100% you.
Yep.
And nobody else was going to do it but you. So when does Betty start to come into fruition? Like, when does she start to rise up?
So it really happened about 6 months later. A friend of mine that rode bikes, ironically, introduced me to a guy that rode bikes, and he's in the room tonight. And we met on a group date, if you will. It wasn't really a date, as both of us will attest to. It was pretty comical, but we met, and it's Matt, he's here in the room, and he's the most intelligent man I've ever met in my entire life. And he sat there. He thought I was absolutely batshit crazy because I was crying. I had a kid. I had an ex-husband. I had an ex-little boyfriend in between. He was like, oh my God.
And this is supposed to be like a date?
It's kind of a date, group date. We went out again
great.
for a sandwich, and it was like, I don't know, we were talking. He was a very smart businessman, and we weren't dating at the time. He became a very good friend, and he said, well, what are you going to do? Because I was lamenting about what am I going to do for work? Because I turned down a couple of corporate jobs. I didn't want to leave the house with my son at home. It was very important for me that I drove him to school. I picked him up. I was there if he needed me in the middle of the day. Whatever it was baseball practice. I was not missing it. I refused. So he said, well, you seem pretty talented. Why don't you start your own company? Why don't you start your own clothing line? And I just start crying, as usual, because that's what I did in those days. I'm crying. And the words that came out of my mouth were, I can't compete with Nike. I have no money and I can't compete with Nike.
You went right to the biggest.
I went right to the
brand.
Yeah. And he just looks at me and he's laughing. What are you talking about, crazy person? I'm like, yeah. I mean, it seemed like the most silly suggestion to me because, like you said, I didn't look at it from like, oh, what could I do to possibly do this? It was, how do I get to success, right? And the biggest success I can think of was Nike. They're the biggest sports brand in the world, and I've always admired them. So how do I get to that? That's ridiculous.
But the fact that that's planted in your brain, that
Right.
you know that is the top, shows that it's already inside you. So maybe Nike isn't the best competitor from what you're doing, but it shows that you have the
big goals.
Yeah, so you have that inside of you to create something of your own that can be at the top of its level, whatever that environment is. So you already saw that Nike.
Yeah, it didn't register
just-
with anything
right.
to me. It had nothing to do with me. It was like so foreign. It was like, what are you talking about? I'm this little designer that sits in my bathrobe in my house.
They don't do that at Nike.
They don't do that at Nike.
So then what was the next step? Like how did it go from that to actually starting to happen?
So what really happened was he obviously planted the seed that day, and he said, well, you don't do that. He goes, so do you know how to get a jersey made? I said, well, of course I know how to get a jersey made. I said, I do custom work all the time, and I've made my own stuff for my own racing. And he said, okay. And I said, but I don't have any money. I said, I'm not getting investors. It was immediately like I was in this place where I didn't want any debt. I owed my dad some money. He was helping float me on my mortgage. I had taken in a couple tenants because I was in a pretty big house that I shouldn't have been in. And so I'm not taking on any more debt. And he said, well, what do you have? What can you afford? I said, I don't probably afford 20 jerseys. He goes, well, do you know anyone who can do that for you? And I said, I think so. I'm going to go knock on the door at Squadra up in Vista. And I'm going to see, I've worked with them before, and maybe, they'll do this for me. But I really want my own zipper pulls and tags. I was very specific about that. So I went up there, and I'd worked with them, and I just said, hey, you know what, you guys? I want to make 30 jerseys. So that's how it started. And they said, yes, they would do it for me if I paid for the zipper pulls and the tags that were going to cost me some extra. So Matt says to me, he says, well, I'll lend you some money. Oh, no. Okay, first of all, we're not dating. I'm not owing you anything, smart man.
This guy wants to give me some
super
money.
geek. Like, I don't even know who you are. You don't like kids. Like, no. I'm not taking any money from you. So he says, he's a veterinarian radiologist. So he says, well, listen, I write books sometimes, so I have a book project I want to work on. I want to work on a dog breed book. This is a true story. So I say, he goes, I know you come from like magazine layouts. I go, I love laying out multi-page things. Like, that's the best thing ever. He goes, well, can I hire you to lay out this book? And I go, of course. And he goes, well, it's this pretty big book. It's going to be like 100 pages. How much would you charge me? So I came up with my estimate. I said, $5,000. And he goes, so now I know this. I guess he gulped because he was like, that was more than I was bargaining for. And he goes,
He's like, that's more than I was going to let her borrow.
yeah. No, it was more like, this is a flippin' expensive book, right? Like, I thought she was going to charge me like $1,000. So he says, now I really got it. He's thinking to himself, I know the story now. So he pays me up front, and I said, I felt really uncomfortable about it. And again, we still aren't dating. We're just friends. Feel really uncomfortable, but I said, all right, I take the money. And he sends me like a payment schedule, because if any of you know Matt, he's very like, right brain oriented. So he makes me a spreadsheet of payments methodically that he thinks I can manage. Yes, you should be laughing, Noelle. Over time. And I panic when I see the payment plan, because I'm like, he thought it'd take me like 6 months to do this book. Well, I knocked the friggin' book out in 2 weeks. I'm like, here you go. And he's like, what? I'm like, you gave me $5,000. I've been freaking out about it. I owe you the work. So the book got done. Fastest book in history? I don't know. Whatever. I paid Matt back with book layout.
That's awesome.
So we have a little self-published dog breed book.
Is it available on Amazon?
It was. We need to get it back up there.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty funny book. But anyway, that was the seed money. So that allowed me to buy some additional jerseys and shorts and a couple things. So that's really how it started. And put up a WordPress website, and I had line art. We didn't even have photography, and it was really methodically one thing at a time, one challenge right in front of me at the time, because that was all I could handle. That was where my life was in that moment. But it actually makes for a great building a business. I know that now. It didn't make sense in the moment, but I know that now. That's the best way to start a business, I think.
Because you were methodical and you were just focused on what it was in front of you.
Yeah.
So you were making sure like you weren't, because you were like, I might not get to the next step.
Right, correct. And I had to be smart about where I was in that moment, in my life, in my personal life, and in starting this business.
Do you feel like there was a part of you, like I know, you didn't want to borrow money, you didn't want to get investors. Do you feel like there was a part of you that was like fearful to rely on somebody again?
Absolutely. Because that's all I did was I made an assumption that who you marry was there forever. And I knew people got divorced, but I didn't want to have to rely on anyone. And it's funny because I've gone through periods, I remember being very stubborn as a child. So it's definitely in there with me where I've gone through that. And I felt like I had really let my guard down and become vulnerable. And that I was not going to do that again. It was me. I needed to do this for me and my son Gavin, and that was it.
So how'd you sell the jerseys? What was the plan?
The plan was literally, I'm going to make 30 jerseys, and if I sell them, I'll make more. But it was around Ironman in Hawaii time in October, and I used to go there almost every year. I raced in '98, but I went back every year after that. In some capacity. I would sell my soul to people like Zoot, and I'd say, hey, you guys, if you give me a floor space and fly me there, I'll stand in your booth for a week, because I loved it there. And so that's what I did. So I couldn't miss it, but I couldn't afford to go. So I actually don't remember how I got there, but I had a backpack of jerseys on me. And I got to Kona, and I knew a lot of people just from being there year after year, and the triathlon community, as we all know, is very small. And I put a jersey on and I walked through town, which in Kona you can walk around in a Speedo, so it doesn't really matter what you're wearing. You look like a tri-geek no matter what. So I had my cycling jersey on with my big logo, and it was like, I'm going to walk around in it and I'm going to see if anyone talks to me about it. Because I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. And I remember it was the first couple hours I was in town. I walked by this little strip of shops, and this woman came running out of her shop. Excuse me. And she grabbed me and she's like, what are you wearing? What is that? I said, I was really meek. I was like a little bit nervous. I was like, well, I designed this jersey, in this little voice. And she's like, do you have any more in that pack? And I said, sure. Come into my shop. So she brings me in the little bike shop, and she looks at it, and she's like, I want 15 of them right now. What will you sell them to me for? And I hadn't even thought about it. I was like,
well, that wasn't the next step?
No.
You're not there yet.
I wasn't there yet.
You got these jerseys, these 30 you
So
need to unload.
Like, okay.
You're like, where's Matt and his spreadsheet?
I was like, there's no spreadsheet. So, I literally, I knew what I paid for them. I don't even know what I sold them to her for, but I remember she took 15 jerseys off my hands, and 5 days later, after being in town and people seeing this logo and this jersey and just talking to me about it, saying, oh, that's really cute, where'd you get it, or what is that? I'd emptied my backpack.
And at this time, was it just the logo,
So I wish I should have brought it, but the original one was the big logo. It was like in the shield motif with these like swirly things. It was really feminine, but it was like, it's kind of embarrassing now because it was like front and centered, and I would never do that now, but
We had to get the message out, yeah.
I had to get the message out, and it was really about the logo. Was anyone going to look at the skull butterfly logo and ask me what it was? Because to me, I really liked it, but I don't know if anyone was going to notice it. I had no idea.
So this was a part of your step-by-step process, was designing this logo.
Yeah.
And as you're designing it, are you having thoughts of like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is never gonna work? Or was there doubt in there? Or was it just survival mode? Like, I have to just keep going and I can't entertain any of those thoughts?
It was actually neither. It was art. Believe it or not, in that moment with the jersey and the logo, because in the past I had designed some kits for myself to race in, and I thought, I'm just going to design myself a jersey that I would wear. And that was all it was. It wasn't thinking about those two other things in that moment. And I just wanted to see if anyone else liked it.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Business 101. Let's see if anyone else likes it.
Yeah, but there was so of course I always think of everything from like, an energetic standpoint and the universe and the metaphysical laws and all that stuff. And the thing is that the core of this new business was there was no desperation in that design. There was no, this has to pay the mortgage. There was none of that.
No.
And when we do that, when we focus so hard on something, and if we do it from this lackful energy, like we have to have it because we don't have it, we actually push it further away from us. And I think that was one of these amazing things that was happening for you, where there was just kind of, I'm gonna do my craft, and I'm gonna see if anybody else likes it. And there was no desperation around it. And then that woman, coincidentally, which there's no coincidence, runs out of this. I mean, this story is just it's so powerful. It's so amazing. I mean, that first woman, like, look at what she helped you launch.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was more, I started the business as a side business. It was really, if I sell, and this was what Matt had broken down for me. He said, think about this. If you sell one jersey a day and you make $50 a day, that's an hour of what you're charging in freelance design time. And I was like, oh, yeah. So my thought process, and even when I was designing, I wasn't thinking about that. It was a craft, but it was, if this works, great. If it doesn't, I haven't lost anything, so I didn't invest a lot. It wasn't like like you said, it wasn't desperation, but it was like, oh, this could be a bonus. This could be a side gig. It was really what it was, in my extra mad money, if you will, to kind of, so I don't have to shamefully kind of owe my dad more money. Was basically what it was.
So the backpack's empty, and you're coming home from Kona, and are you thinking okay, I'm going to continue to do this?
I definitely did. I remember thinking I might, the thought that went through my head was I might be onto something, but it wasn't like I am onto something, it was I might be. So I'm gonna order 30 more jerseys, and I'm gonna make a matching short to go with it. And I'm gonna put up this little WordPress website and see what happens.
And it's so funny because back then you could just sell a jersey. Now everybody wants the whole thing.
Kit.
Yeah,
and the arm warmers.
Well, definitely. I definitely sell. I mean, I think when I started, it was more jersey driven, but I think now,
because we all had the black Pearl
everyone had
shorts.
the pearl. Yes, exactly. And I think now it's. So I didn't know how many kits I would sell. I made the matching short because I thought it was cool. But again, was anyone else going to think it was cool?
And this is just bike jersey to start with.
Jersey and bike short, not even a bib short. Yep.
So then, when does it really start to take off? This is 2010, Kona 2010.
Yep, it was that fall, and honestly, in my head, it fast forwards a little bit because I don't remember the in between. But it was methodically, okay, I sold this many, so I'm going to buy more, and I kept with that design for a while. I feel like then in 2011, I started working on my first tri design, a tri top and a tri short, and it was a similar design, but it was a different color, and. So it was just slowly from there, and it's crazy, I don't remember all the details, but it was very slow. And now you can ask Noelle, she's sitting here, it's like every week I'm trying to design something new. It's like a frenzy of, we got to come up with something else.
But I think with the branding, first of all, your creativity was let to ride. You should never interrupt the creative process. Let the creative be the creatives, and then just slowly change things, very slowly, color. Color. That's where you start. That's where you start to get that consistency, so people start seeing it over and over, and that repetition and expands. Then once you have that established community, then you just go wild, which is probably what you was feeling compelled to do at the start, being a creative person. You've got all these ideas, but just stay the course.
Yes and no. I honestly was I was so timid and broken. In that moment, I didn't think I had anything. I didn't think I could take it anywhere. I will be honest with you. It was literally, it wasn't even in the mindset at all that this could turn into anything, and it wasn't methodical. I wish I could say it was. It was just me being very cautious and shy and afraid.
So when did you start believing in it? Believing in it that it was going to be something, that it was calling you for more?
I think it was 2012 because I realized that I couldn't just, I was shipping all the packages, I was writing all the I had to have note cards. I was very specific. I had to have the branding straight off and all these little details. But I was handwriting the address labels, and I was going to the post office every day, and it became too much. So I had to have somebody help me. And then I started looking at the numbers, and at that point, Matt was in my life quite a bit. on and off, which we don't have to touch on, but it was on and off.
It's another podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast.
The couples podcast.
Couples
But,
podcast. Bring them back.
But basically, I think it was 2012, at the end of 2012, 2 years in, I went, I think this is becoming a real business. And I think I can back off on the freelance graphic design work I'm doing, where I'm just working on 30 random things at any moment.
Was that tough to do, to give that up?
No,
No.
it was a natural. I mean, it sounds weird. It really was just like it was sort of like when I decided to stop racing or traveling. When I knew it was time, it was time. And I've always been one, again, my parents are here, but when I made decisions, I always seemed, I think, and they can speak to this later, but I believe I made a decision with my gut, and I always felt like if it wasn't right, I could change it if I wasn't affecting somebody else, like in a negative manner. So it was sort of like, okay, well, I'm gonna try this, and if it doesn't work, we'll go back to what I know or what I've been doing. It was like I would move. My mom would say, oh, you're gonna break up with your boyfriend, you're gonna move, and you're gonna quit your job all at once. And I go, yeah, Mom, that's how I roll. But I wasn't ever fearful of change. I was brought to my knees by it in that moment, but in terms of me making the decision to do things, I kind of just do it, and I give it a go.
Yeah, I get that. You're describing yourself as kind of feeling like, timid and broken and all of that, but now out of Betty Designs comes Badass is Beautiful and Do Epic Shit. Now you're starting to be pretty edgy.
Yep.
And so as a consumer, we're feeling like, oh, this girl's got it going on. Like, she's so confident and everything. But when you're putting this stuff out there, did you have pushback from that? Were there times where you're like, I can't put this out, it's a swear word, or... I mean, it's not in our house.
Well, I do remember. So my whole shtick has always been, I think it's the contrast between being feminine and being kind of a badass athlete. Even though that word was not like commonplace back when I started the business, I always loved that dichotomy in women. I thought it was really neat that they could be feminine and strong at the same time, and that's where the skull and butterfly came from. And then coming up with this, I never wanted a couple of things. One, my designs were always loud. There was a lot of contrast, a lot of bright and bold colors, asymmetry and things. I didn't want it to be vanilla. I didn't want it to be really plain, and I purposefully, didn't create that. And then when I thought about coming up with some kind of a tagline for the brand, it was like, I just want to say it like it is. And I said, well, badass is beautiful. It's really cool. Like, I thought it was cool. And I'm like, I was scared. Am I going to get a lot of backlash for using that word badass? And I actually spelled it in 2 words on purpose, methodically, because it can be either way. And I use it both ways now in marketing. But I was like, again, I was sort of like, heck with it. I'm just going to put it out there. It's not for everyone. I went out of the gate knowing it wasn't for everyone, but hoping it would be for a lot of people who are like me. And I found a lot of people who were similar to me. And they wanted that. They wanted that bit of edge, because I think there wasn't anything in the industry at that time. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a blur to me, but I really don't think there was.
No, I
and
don't.
Definitely no badass word
Definitely
floating
not.
around. Now it's mainstream. It's as common as Kleenex, but yeah.
And then when did the Betty Squad, when was that starting to come into your awareness that you wanted to build more of a community, not just have the apparel, but, from a business standpoint, how brilliant, right? And now you see this all the time we see it with Wadi, we see it with Smash, we see it with, Nicole, and we had talked about Nicole DeBoom, and I was one of her first ambassadors when she was coming out with the skirts, and I feel like that was the first time I ever I think that was 2008.
Kind of squad.
2008-ish, where you had this ambassadorship or this squad.
Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate because as an amateur triathlete, I had sponsors. I had product sponsors, and I kind of got some crap for it in the community because I wasn't the fastest, but I was given bikes, I was given clothing, and I was really proud of that. And I really was I was with Speedo for 8 years, then I was with Zoop for another almost 10 years. I was very brand loyal, and so when I thought about how do I get this thing going, I mean, print ads, I couldn't afford a print ad. That was still a thing. I couldn't take out a print ad in Triathlete Magazine or Runner's World. I didn't have the money for that. So what did I do? I looked around my local community, and I said, who do I race with that's super cool, or, she's got this great energy, and she's you know, she may not be on the podium, but she's a great athlete. She's out here all the time. She's talking to people. She's got this great positive energy about her. I want her in my stuff. So I approached a couple of people I had been racing with. And then I think it went formal to an actual ambassador team in 2014. And I had managed some teams for a local bike shop here, so I had some experience in managing like a small women's team of 10 with Nitro Bike Shop. But I decided to do like a US based, like I picked East Coast, I think I picked Colorado. There was like certain regions, and I handpicked these women that I heard through word of mouth kind of thing. It got recommended. And Instagram was out, but it was starting to get its roots. And I found these women that way, and so I put them on the ambassador team, and then that's sort of, it's become this big snowball effect. You guys all know, I mean, it's gone absolutely insane. And the other thing that I have found to be incredibly interesting with launching a women's brand, and what I love about women and women in sport, is women will go up and talk to each other if they see something on you that they like, if you're carrying a cute bag. I have chased women out of coffee shops for yoga pants. Like, oh my God, where did you get those? I must have those. And they're complete strangers. So what I realized is this is how my brand was getting spread around, because there'd be a race going on and you go up and you go, oh my God, that's so cute, where'd you get it? It's a very natural thing for women to do. It's a little more awkward, I think, if men do that.
It's true. We were walking home from the coffee shop this morning. We were in a full conversation. I yell over at this lady, great shoes.
Right.
She's like, thanks.
I wouldn't yell out great shoes.
But they were great shoes. So you're so right. Yeah.
So, yeah, and it was like the more people you get it on, and if they have this great energy and they're talking and sharing, it was really about sharing this common thread of passion for. It was at the time doing triathlons, right? These women are, and my core customer base is triathletes. And they love their stuff and they chat each other up. And one of the neatest things that I had no intention of purposefully creating is you go to a race and I find the girls, if they see someone else in a Betty kit, they cheer Go Betty. And even spectators now, if they know what the brand is, they say Go Betty. I could not have scripted that if I had tried. I can't take full credit. I mean, maybe it was subconscious, I have no idea, but it was not like I sat down and wrote this business plan and said, I'm going to create this saying, Go Betty.
Right.
Never.
How did you come up with the name?
The name was sort of a knee-jerk joke reaction to a little ad agency business I had with an ex-partner who, we were really different. When I was doing my freelance business, we had made a little agency. She was real different. I was in the action sports, endurance sports segment. She was much more corporate. And we just didn't get along, and I realized after like 9 months we weren't great business partners, and so I kind of took my clients and we just amicably split up. She took her people, I took mine. We were really small. And I went, oh my gosh, I need a name for myself for my freelance business. So I came up with Brand Betty, and I came up with Betty not because it's a family name. It was a very fun, kind of a hip surfer chick vibe out of Australia, and I always want to be this great surfer, and I'm really lame at that, but whatever. I just thought it was super cutesy. I didn't want to be corporate and formal. I didn't want to work in biotech. I wanted to work in the endurance sports community and the things that I loved. And so it was a playful kind of a thing. I had no idea. Again, it wasn't conscious that this name would be this great moniker to sort of just be like everybody's a Betty. Every woman's a Betty. I mean, you are.
And how big is like the community now, the squad? And
The squad has varied. 2 years ago, we went up to 225. That was too many. It was hard to manage, and we lost a little bit of our intimacy in the group and just feeling like it was a real close, connected group. And so we've gone through a lot of growing pains, but this is year 6, and we've got a group of 125 women. At least half have been with us for 1 year or more previous to 2019, and we have a really great group of people who really support each other.
That's what we find out with, we interviewed Tu Tran, who is now the manager of Wide Inc. And so they've got their like 100 people, but then they've actually unloaded this newer thing, I think is the Hit Squad, which is even like the next level. I think there's like 500 people in that thing. So I think back to your point about exploring options and then just saying yes, and then coming back and saying, you can always go back. You can always go back.
Yep.
right, we got too big.
We got
Right.
too big, and for
And it
me,
gets
that
still-
didn't feel right.
Right.
It didn't feel right for the brand.
The gut didn't feel right.
Didn't feel right. I wanted a more intimate group where the women really, We have a closed Facebook group, but they communicate. I don't know what they do all day. We don't think any of them work because they're literally on the Facebook page or emailing one of us or posting on Instagram. It's unbelievable. But they are so passionate about everything they do. And they're all really similar.
So when you got big, you said we had some growing pains, and then of course, putting out these, more edgy taglines and things like that. What have you learned about not being able to please everyone? And maybe not even just in your business, but in your life.
Well, that's saying you can't please everyone. That is a definite.
You can't, but it's such a hard thing to sit
hard.
with.
It's really hard because, of course, you want everyone to like you, but no, not everyone's going to like you. It just is what it is. And you have to just, I don't know. You can't be all things to everyone.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent, you definitely know that. It's just you got to teach.
Being
your
a parent
kid.
probably helps.
It helps. But I realized that, I've had people come up at, when we're in Kona at a booth and go, oh my gosh, are you a devil worshiper? You have a skull in your logo. And it's just like I smile and I kind of laugh and I just say, I always say it's a happy skull. It's attached to a butterfly. And they just kind of look at me and I said, look at our tent. It's neon pink. Like, how dark could we be? They're like, are you dark? And I go, no, I don't think so. And they just, carry on. It's not for them. And that's okay. That's why all these brands can now coexist and all these different groups and these communities. Everyone has to find their place. And like I said, I didn't know if there were other people like me. I found my people. There's a lot of, we see them at the camp that we hold in the spring. Last year we held a little camp here. And it's literally like summer camp when they leave. There's tears and hugging and crying and lifelong friendships. It's pretty amazing.
And you never thought you'd have a community, build a
I had
community
no
like
idea.
this?
No idea.
Where do you think it's going to go? Where do you see it going? 5 years, 10 years?
I think about that. Again, since I never sat down formal business plan, I have no formal business forecasting or anything. I've made a conscious decision in the sense of I still haven't taken on any dollars. I want to keep it manageable. I want to keep it enjoyable for me as a designer. We've tried, having an extra employee or two, and there's still just two of us. We found that Noelle's phenomenal. She's been with me for a long time now, like 4 years in some capacity. There's no reason to get greedy. There's no reason for me. I'm fortunate I am where I am at, that this became a full-time job for me. I work out of my house. I can go ride my bike with my husband. Even though my son is now 17 and doesn't like spending that much time with mom, he gets to see mom. Mom's around. And I wouldn't change a darn thing about it. I didn't want to grow just for business sake growth. And I hope that this community, I think at the end of the day, when all this social media stuff really dies down, I do think the meaningful relationships are going to be the things that stick. I really, really do. I think the superficiality and pimping product and all this stuff has to sort of mellow out. We're in a real upwards trajectory on that, but I think people are going to want the real stuff. And I don't know, as a brand, I know for me, I try to respond to every DM, every message. I think it's really important for me as the business owner. And even if someone's being nasty, sometimes Noelle won't know how to respond to somebody, and I'll say, I'll take them. And it's just people want to be heard, and they want to be able to vent, and they want to be looked at as a human being, and it's having those human contact points. I think it's super important, and I think for longevity of the brand, I hope that that's what keeps us going. And I can't say I want it to be twice as big. It doesn't matter to me. It could stay right where it is, as we have the quality of people.
What would you say to the Kristin of 10 years ago?
Wow. Well, I definitely say there's all these components of me I didn't know I had in me, but the big underlying one, I think I didn't realize how strong I really am. Yeah. Had no idea.
Mm-hmm. And, all of us, everyone in this audience, BJ and I and you and, we will get brought to our knees in life in some capacity. Some of us probably already have, we have. It's in those moments where life gets very hyper-focused.
Yep.
And it's like, what do I just need to do now? Mm-hmm. And I know for me in those moments, which weren't that long ago, it was like, okay, right now all I can do is I can take another breath. Yeah. That's what I can do. And sometimes that was all the strength I had. And we are more powerful than we know. And certainly when things are going great, we don't have to exercise all that power and strength. But to know that it's within us is something that you never go back from.
Yep.
You never get, there's nothing you can't handle.
Well, I'd like to think. One never knows. I hope I'm not tested. I'm not tested, but I do feel like when things get tough, they're going to get better, and I'm going to get through it in one way or another. Whatever that thing is, it's very much the same in endurance sports. You're going to go through those low points, and you're going to come out the other side. And when I don't, that means it's my time, period. So that's it.
Awesome. We just blew like almost an hour so quick. That went so fast. We want to know if you guys have any questions for Kristin. Oh, Mom.
Uh-oh.
Mom.
She's like, I'd like to clear up a few things.
What?
Yes.
Why?
You were in love with Betty Boop. I thought the whole thing came.
I was? I thought I liked the Superman and the Incredible Hulk.
Betty Boop. Yep.
So Kristin's mom, just for people who can't, who aren't here, Kristin's mom is very confused because she thought that Betty Designs, up until just a few moments ago, thought that Betty Designs came from Kristin's apparent lockdown obsession with Betty Boop.
I had an obsession with Snoopy, Mom, not Betty Boop. See, I'm losing my mind. I don't remember a lot of things. I'm getting old.
We're unlocking some
Well, I'm glad
early
that you didn't
childhood
remember
trauma.
that. It would have been Snoopy Designs.
Maybe that was in the subconscious. maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Competing with the boys.
Well, competing with the boys for sure. No, I remember that part.
So when she was when she was younger and she was competing with taking on the neighborhood boys, was her like did she take on the Betty Boop persona? Like was that her source of strength? Is that what you're saying? No.
No, that was all boy.
No, that was just
I wanted to be a boy. I was going to grow up and be a boy. That's what I told them.
Sorry. We're getting some really good insight.
We need some men's apparel here.
I know.
That's a whole nother podcast too. We'll come back to that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any
other
questions about getting through those moments in life? Or all right. Well, I have one more question then.
Okay.
So fear, right? Fear of the dirt. Fear of like, how am I going to pay the mortgage? Like, what have you? Because you've gotten to the other side of these things. Mm-hmm. You've done 4 years of the BWR. You're sitting here with this beautiful inventory of clothing behind us. What have you learned about getting to the other side of fear?
It's pretty rad. I mean, it's really motivating. Faced with a little bit of fear is good. I think it keeps your senses on alert. I think it pushes you to do things in so many ways. Creatively, I'm fearful that no one's going to buy anything else, so I get fearful about that. So I have to come up with the next, good design. I don't know. Fear is always in that forefront with all the pleasurable, fun stuff, and it's also about discomfort, not just the fear, but being uncomfortable and overcoming. It's whatever the little thing is, and I remember from even when my son was really young, he'd wake up, typical kid, oh, I don't feel good today. I don't want to go to school. So I've told him this forever. It's like you're not going to feel good every day. Some days you're going to wake up and you're not going to feel good, but you get up and you get out the door. And that's like the one big thing, whether it's fear or it's not feeling well, whatever it is. Kind of turning that into a positive, because when you come out the other side, it's really empowering. Gives you a very centered sort of, I don't know, you're competent and you have the ability to get through things.
And to you, what does it mean to be a badass?
Gosh, to be a badass. I mean, I think to be a badass is to have different facets. It's not all being about hard and being tough. I think it's about being vulnerable, being human, being open, being honest. I think being badass is being a real person. I think you can go out there and act tough. Anyone can put on that big tough look and say, look at me, I'm going to do this, or I am this. But who are you really? I think being a badass is just being able to show who you are. And to be kind, and to be humble, and to be just supportive of other people.
Do you think your fullest, most authentic self has risen to the surface yet?
No.
There's more to go?
I think there's probably more. I've learned a lot in a very condensed amount of time. And while in the moments I've thought it was horrible, I wouldn't change a darn thing. I really wouldn't. So, no, I think there's so much more growth still. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Growth related to your diet, maybe, or no?
Well, she is partially vegan now.
I'm,
Sugar doesn't count.
is that growth or is that just what I like?
Yeah, Lucky Charms doesn't mean you're vegan. Full diet of Lucky Charms 24/7.
I know, but if she feels good about, if you feel
Yeah.
good about what you're eating,
Being
that's
your
what it is.
authentic self, Matt. I like Lucky Charms. And Diet Coke. I'm sorry, I do.
So, share with us something that perhaps people don't know about you or assume about you and you want to clear up the situation.
I think in general, if people don't know me, unfortunately, because Matt's always testing lenses, he captures the most horrific photos of me and I look angry. And I'm really not an angry person. I think that my demeanor when I'm not engaged, it can look very intense. And I think people might make that assumption about me that I'm a bitch or that I'm not friendly. I'm actually the biggest marshmallow on the planet. And if you talk to me about me, I could just meet you in the street. And if you're having a bad day on the side of the street and you're crying, I'm going to sit down on the curb and cry with you. So I think that's the biggest thing. I look a lot tougher than I really am sometimes.
I think you're pretty badass. All right. Yeah, we got some head nods in the group. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Kristin, you're amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, you
I'm
guys, for coming.
So glad that we got, let's clap. Let's give a round of applause. Yes, and I'm so glad that, that you found your way and that you've risen up and that you've shared your beautiful art with everyone. And being in the triathlon world for a long time now, we've been admiring it.
We
and
see
it's
it everywhere.
We see it everywhere, and we
Love it.
do cheer on those Betties. You better believe it. So thank
I
you
love
so
it.
much for
Thank
being here
you.
tonight.
Thanks, guys.